This video is going to have a look at answering the 2012 HSC question 11. How have religious traditions in Australia given support to the process of Aboriginal reconciliation? So the first thing we ask is, which dot point does this question address? This question addresses the dot point, examine the relationship between Aboriginal spiritualities and religious traditions in the process of reconciliation. So to break down the question, we look at those major Christian traditions: Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, and the two main faiths that we're going to refer to are Christianity and Judaism. Reconciliation is a process. We are, as an Australian society, by no means reconciled with Indigenous peoples. This is a process, and as such, it's ongoing. There are certain initiatives, however, that aid this process that need to be promoted to help the broader Australian community to understand Indigenous culture. Reconciliation in Australia is the process of reconciling Indigenous Australia with non-Indigenous peoples. It's about trying to apologise for past wrongs by governments and missionary activities and gaining the recognition of past ill treatment. Reconciliation can occur by various religious traditions trying to understand Aboriginal spirituality, in particular the importance of the land and culture to their spirituality. By what means can reconciliation be facilitated? Well, Christian churches have really led the way on this. This is rightly so, since Christian churches have been part of that process of dispossession of Aboriginal peoples from their lands through their missionary activities, and by nature of the fact that Australian society has largely got a Christian history and foundation. So the Australian Council of Churches, which was renamed the National Council of Churches in Australia, or the NCCA, along with the Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace, in 1980 established a task force to make a stand against the incursion of mining companies into Aboriginal land. This was inspired by a study entitled Land Rights, A Christian Perspective by Derek Kahn. In January 1998, Australia's bicentennial year, the leaders of Australian churches issued a statement toward reconciliation in Australian society, which included a call for healing of division and just settlement with Aboriginal people. We can see that this idea of reconciliation really does resonate with Christians, because reconciliation, forgiveness and grace is a key part of Christian daily life. We have that secular example, Kevin Rudd's sorry speech in 2008, but it's largely been the Christian tradition and the Jewish tradition that have sought through various initiatives to put Rudd's sorry speech into action. If we have a look at the National Council of Churches Australia website, the organisation NATSIC, or National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Ecumenical Commission, you can see the tabs across the top, and you can read about NATSIC. But just quickly looking, we can see Christ and culture. This allows Indigenous Christians to explore faith in their own cultural context. There's also Mangada Bibaya, which brings together experienced Indigenous Australian Christians to support one another, share ideas and experiences in their expression of Indigenous theology. And we also have the issue of Indigenous poverty, the Make Indigenous Poverty History. The National Council of Churches in Australia aims to eradicate poverty within Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, often exacerbated by their marginalisation and exclusion from mainstream society. Could have a look at various issues. And we see here different Christian denominations and contact details to support reconciliation with Indigenous people. Also, the Catholic and Anglican churches have incorporated the smoking ceremony into their formal liturgies as a way of acknowledging the importance of Aboriginal rituals. Anglican and Methodist churches in 1973 established Nungalinga College in Darwin to train Aboriginal students for ministry, theology courses that address the unique nature of Aboriginality and spirituality, and so that white missionaries come as supporters rather than as the lead missionaries themselves. We also have the Jewish faith has also been quite key in supporting Aboriginal issues. This kind of goes back to 1938 when a group of Aboriginal people, following Kristallnacht in Germany, when the synagogues of Germany were destroyed, there was the Australian Aborigines League, which protested at the German consulate in Melbourne. At this time, Aboriginal people had few rights themselves, and yet they were willing to put themselves out there and make a courageous statement on behalf of the rights of those German Jews. Well, the Jewish people haven't forgotten that, and they observe the week of prayer for Aboriginal reconciliation, of which we see a flyer here on the NATSIC webpage. And we see here that Jewish leaders recognise the racism that is largely silent part of Australian culture in their own experience, particularly of the Holocaust in Germany, and they feel a sense of solidarity between with the Aboriginal people. There's also the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies issuing a statement on reconciliation that recognises that the Jewish community can learn from Australia's Indigenous population and recognise that Aboriginal people have endured discrimination that's had an impact on their health, education and employment opportunities. And if you click on the link, you might want to have a read of parts of that statement that demonstrate clear support for Indigenous Australians. Just by way of some prominent Jewish individuals, we have Ron Caston QC, who represented the attitude of many Jewish people as leading counsel in the historic Mabo case, and he recognised the oppression and the denial of rights of Jewish people, did not want to see Aboriginal people victimised in their own country, in his country, Australia. And he recognised this great Australian silence, or this disremembering of the true history of Indigenous peoples since white invasion. So in answering this question, remember that you only have 17 lines, use the ideal paragraph structure, refer specifically to the given dot points, and use the language of the dot points.